Welcome back to News Talk, and our conversation this time with Montgomery County State Delegate Kumar. He's a Democrat from the 17th District. He's represented that seat in the Maryland legislature since the early 1990s. He's running for the House seat being vacated by Congressman Chris Van Hollen, who, of course, is running for the United States Senate.
That's right.
Every time a senator resigns, there's a series of dominoes, right?
Dominoes, yeah.
We're watching that play out right now. How much interaction have you had over the years with Barbara Mikulski? One of the big focuses right now is equal pay for equal work.
Right.
Barbara Mikulski was a trailblazer and has been a voice for women, for families, for children, for veterans.
And we just passed a bill in the Maryland General Assembly for equal pay for equal work.
We know what she's like in public. What does she like to work with as a colleague?
You know, she's very similar. I mean, I think it's so appropriate that her initials are BAM. Bam. That woman, you want her on your side, and there is no problem that's too small for her to solve. I'm going to miss her.
Talk about, the skill sets, the skills she brings, where she derives the passion that she does. I mean, the public persona of Barbara Mikulski is the fighter for the little guy. But, of course, a lot of politicians aren't in private who they seem to be in public. You don't get the sense of that duality with her.
No.
Where do you think that comes from?
What you see is what you get. I mean, she was a community organizer in Baltimore, and she fought against a road and fought for her community, and she learned the dual skills of bringing people together to the table, but then being very forceful when she didn't get what she and her community wanted. And that has just grown and grown and grown. And now for her, it's Maryland and America, and she brings people to the table, and if people misbehave or they do the wrong thing, she's very, very tough. And I think Chris, by the way, is going to be a fantastic replacement.
In the Edwards Van Hollen battle,
I'm supporting Chris,
Why?
yes. I kind of have worked with him for many, many years, and I know he knows how to solve problems. I mean, just as all the problems that we've worked on together, whether it's regulating insurance companies, whether it's global climate change, this is a guy who knows how to bring people together and get problems solved. And I like to believe that I'm a bit like that myself. But the bottom line is, it has to be about the voters. It has to be about your state and your region and doing things for your constituents. That's what the central focus has to be.
How do you explain, thinking back for a second about Barbara Mikulski, how she got in, what a novelty it was to have a woman in the Senate back at the time that she, I guess it was Mac Mathias, correct me if I'm wrong, who retired in '86, and she won a contested primary. I think Michael Barnes was in that race.
That's right, another great candidate.
So back in the day, we had come out of the 70s, the failure of the Equal Rights Amendment.
Right.
We knew that women made less for the same work, but it wasn't, I think there was an expectation that over time that unfairness would go away.
Right.
Here we are in 2016.
Still fighting it.
Why? Why do you think that is, and how do we overcome?
Well, it is one of the biggest problems in human society generally, and it's not going to be erased quickly. But one of the great advantages of having somebody like Barbara Mikulski is persistence. She is not going to go away because she didn't get what she wanted for the state of Maryland this year, last year, next year, the year after that. She is going to just keep coming back. And that, you have to take the long view.
What's in corporate America, I hate to say it that way, but because there's probably an issue in the nonprofit sector and in the government world as well, we as a society don't value the work of women the way we do men, even though we're all sitting around, we're sitting in the same offices doing the same work, with the same skill set, I want to believe.
Right.
And yet the paychecks tell a different story.
Well, it starts in childhood and in the classroom. We have a bias that says, oh, boys are good at math, but girls aren't good at math, for example. No other country takes that sort of attitude that we do. It's an unspoken bias. When a boy does poorly in language arts and a girl does better, it's sort of, oh, that's the way it's going to be. No, girls need to learn math and science just the same and as well as boys. And one of my I have plenty of friends who are from Asia, who are from Europe, who are women, and they're scientists or engineers. We have to start early and start often in preparing men and boys and girls for success in the future.
There's also the double standard that says that if a man exhibits strength, he's a leader, and if a woman exhibits strength, she's a B.
Yeah, that's right. And that's something that each and every one of us has to fight. The fact of the matter is tough, strong women move policy forward. And Senator Mikulski is a good example of that. And she's a role model, not just for women, but for men as well.
Why are you running? I know you you were majority leader in the House.
Right.
You then became and have remained Transportation and the Environment Committee Chairman in the House. The two of your passions. If you get to Congress, working potentially in the minority, who knows?
Right.
In this crazy year, who knows what we'll see come January 2017? But certainly as the year began, the expectation was the next Congress would be controlled by Republicans.
Right.
As a freshman in the minority party, how do you begin to gain some traction?
Well, you know, I have a reputation for working with Republicans and people who I disagree with. I mean, we just passed the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Act, which was signed by Governor Larry Hogan, a Republican. I got renewable energy through past Bob Ehrlich, who was a Republican governor as well. And we worked with our Republican and conservative colleagues to pass a major bill to clean up the Chesapeake Bay again this year. You know, you have to work with people who you disagree with. You have to be forthright and honest and tough, but you have to be willing to work with people. And my view is that if you're not the person who is going to stand up for the person who's being discriminated against by an insurance company or by the oil and gas industry trying to pretend that global warming doesn't exist, you have to be the guy or the gal, you have to be the person who's willing to fight for everyday people, who's willing to use government as a tool to solve problems. And it's what I've done for decades.
I confess I had never heard of David Trone before a few months ago. I may have purchased a bottle of red in one of his stores.
Chances are.
But I'd never heard of the guy. There's no escaping his ads on radio and TV. They're everywhere. And we've talked to him. He's not an unimpressive guy. I mean, there's an interesting story there, and there's certainly a strength of personality. I'm sure you've interacted with him at forums. You may have known him before this race. What do you make of him?
Yeah, I did.
And what do you make of someone who can write that kind of check, so to speak, in terms of saturating the airwaves?
Let me tell you something about District 8 Democratic voters. They are not so easily swayed just by the dead weight of repetition on TV and in their mailboxes. District 8 voters, and I've been knocking on doors for a long time now, we're doing our homework, they say. What's your website? What have you done? And so my wife, our volunteers, we're out there in the field every day, and we're running into a lot of people who say, give me, Kumar, a specific reason why I should vote for you. And I'm able to mention reducing greenhouse gases, which I've been doing for decades. I'm able to mention using technology to create thousands of middle-class, high-paying jobs in our state. These are specific things. And Montgomery County voters, at least, and voters in Frederick and Carroll as well. But in this primary, they want to know what you have done.
Montgomery County is the classic place where the lit piles up on the dining room table, and people sit down the weekend before, the day before. I guess with early voting that may have changed a little bit, but I think of friends who've had the literature piled up because they're going to go through it. They may go to the website too in order to educate themselves about the candidates.
But because they're from Montgomery County, they'll make sure they recycle it after they get done reading it.
Speaking of Governor Hogan, were you surprised by the recent poll that showed he's one of the most popular governors in recent Maryland history? And if you find there's some truth to that snapshot, that assessment, how is he able to connect so powerfully?
Well, you know, he's avoided a lot of mistakes that the national Republicans make on a routine basis. He has said he's not going to roll back abortion rights for women, and that he's not going to try and roll back marriage equality for the LGBT community. And a lot of those social issues that the Republican Party gets wrong at the national level, he had early declared in his campaign that he wasn't going to try and change any of that, and we're going to hold him to that as well. And his willingness to work with us on greenhouse gas reduction has been part of that mix as well. I mean, the Republican Party at the national level is about to nominate a candidate who is fundamentally diametrically opposed to the majority of the American people on all the great social issues before us, and they're not going to do well as a result of that. And so I think, you know, these civil liberty issues, and I consider gay rights and abortion rights to be civil liberty issues. These great civil liberty issues, to a great extent, have been resolved in the minds of the average American, but not so much in the minds of the average Republican presidential candidate. And so I think that that is a disjuncture that benefits Larry Hogan right now, but is going to be a big disadvantage in this November.
We have about a minute left. He pushed hard for redistricting reform because of gerrymandering concerns this session. Why did the legislature reject his call on that?
I don't think well, this year we have, but the fact of the matter is we'd like to team up with another state to begin a process where states start to de-escalate this war, and it is exactly that, because it shouldn't just be Maryland, it should be Virginia, it should be Pennsylvania, and other Democrat and Republican majority states.
Find a state, given what's happened in Maryland, where the Democrats control the Assembly, find a state where, and Virginia seems to be the perfect
I was one
suitor.
of the co-sponsors of a law that would have done that, so that we together, not only would we solve the problem together, but we would create a template for other states to move forward, saying, I'm going to work with that state that has a different political leaning, and before you know it, 50 states will have complied, because only the states can do it, not the federal government.
On the theory that no one unilaterally disarms in the middle of a battle, you press the advantage where you have it under the rules that are in play. Then you get
That's right.
Maryland State Delegate Kumar, Democrat from the 17th District, a seat he has held since the early 1990s. I know that because you and I go way, way back in Maryland politics. Yeah. He is a candidate for the House seat now held by Maryland Congressman Chris Van Hollen. Thank you very much for coming in. I will see you Sunday at the debate.
See ya.
We'll take a break here, back with much more news talk right after this.